Imagine a wall of water 40 feet high moving at 40 miles an hour, obliterating everything in its path. Imagine the roar, the sheer unimaginable force. This isn't a scene from a disaster movie. This was a terrifying reality for thousands on May 31st, 1889. The monster wasn't a tsunami, but something man-made, and its collapse unleashed one of America's deadliest catastrophes. Our story begins in the picturesque valley of Johnstown, Pennsylvania. Nestled in a deep basin surrounded by rolling hills, Johnstown was a burgeoning industrial hub. Its lifeblood was steel, its spirit was resilience, and its people were a testament to the American dream of the late 19th century. Rivers the Conemaugh and Stony Creek converged there, powering its mills and providing a vital artery for trade and life. But these same rivers, ironically, would become instruments of its destruction. Above Johnstown, about 14 miles east, lay the majestic Lake Conemaugh, a sprawling body of water formed by the South Fork Dam. This wasn't just any dam. It was an engineering marvel for its time, though, one with a deeply flawed history. Originally built by the state of Pennsylvania for the Pennsylvania Main Line of Public Works, its purpose was to feed water into the canal system. However, by the 1852, the canal system was obsolete, and the dam, along with the reservoir, was sold off to the Pennsylvania Railroad. Then, in 1881, a group of wealthy industrialists from Pittsburgh, led by the likes of Andrew Carnegie, Henry Clay Frick, and Andrew Mellon, purchased the abandoned reservoir. Their vision: to transform it into an exclusive summer retreat, the South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club. This was a playground for the Gilded Age elite, a place of leisure and luxury far removed from the smoky factories of Pittsburgh. They built lavish cottages, a grand clubhouse, and sailed their yachts across the serene waters of Lake Conemaugh. But in their pursuit of an idyllic getaway, crucial decisions were made that sealed Johnstown's fate. The club made several alterations to the dam that severely compromised its integrity. For instance, the original overflow spillway designed to allow excess water to safely escape was narrowed and blocked by fishing screens to prevent their prize game fish from escaping. The pipes meant to drain the lake for repairs were removed and sold for scrap, leaving no way to lower the water level quickly. Perhaps most critically, a section of the dam that had settled was repaired with dirt and brush, not with proper engineering. Locals, acutely aware of the dam's condition, had voiced concerns for years. There were even warnings from engineers and former club members about the inherent danger, but these were largely dismissed or ignored by the powerful club members. They were confident in their private paradise, oblivious to the catastrophe brewing just above the valley. May 28, 38, 1889, the rains begin. The final days of May brought an ominous change in weather. For 3 relentless days, torrential rains began to fall across western Pennsylvania. These weren't just ordinary downpours. They were described as some of the heaviest and most continuous ever recorded in the region. Rivers began to swell, creeks overflowed, and the ground became saturated. The water level in Lake Conemaugh, already high, began to rise dramatically. The members of the South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club, enjoying their weekend retreat, watched with growing concern. Thursday, May 30th, a night of mounting fear. As the sun set on Thursday, the rain showed no signs of stopping. The lake's water level was now precariously close to the top of the dam.
Oh, no!
Club members and engineers frantically
here.
tried to alleviate the pressure. They desperately attempted to clear the blocked spillway, but the sheer volume of water proved overwhelming. Logs, debris, and mud continuously clogged their efforts. Telegraph wires, the valley's only quick link to the outside world, began to fail due to the storms isolating Johnstown, just as danger loomed largest. Throughout the night, teams worked tirelessly, digging trenches along the crest of the dam, hoping to create a new spillway, but their efforts were agonizingly slow against the relentless torrent. Friday, May 31st, early morning. The dam holds barely. Dawn broke on Friday to a scene of unprecedented saturation. The rains continued unabated. Lake Conemaugh was now a monstrous swollen beast, its water licking at the very top of the dam. The dam itself was groaning under the immense pressure. Small leaks, once minor concerns, now became torrents. Cracks appeared. The men, exhausted and desperate, knew their efforts were failing. Reports were sent down to Johnstown, vague warnings that the dam might fail, but without reliable communication, the severity of the threat wasn't fully grasped. Johnstown had faced floods before, and many believed this would be just another high-water event. Friday, May 31st, 1210 p.m., the first crack. Around midday, the inevitable began. A small section of the dam weakened over years, and pummeled by the unrelenting water gave way. It wasn't a sudden catastrophic collapse initially, but rather a widening breach, a tear in the fabric of what was once considered impenetrable. The men on the dam watched in horror as a torrent of water began to carve a path through the earthworks. Panic set in. Some tried to flee, others stood frozen, witnessing the beginning of the end. Friday, May 31st, 3:1. 0 p.m., the cataclysm. In a matter of terrifying minutes, the initial breach exploded into a full-scale rupture. The entire center section of the South Fork Dam disintegrated. Millions upon millions of gallons of water, nearly 20 million tons of it, equivalent to the flow of the Mississippi River, were unleashed. It wasn't just water. It was an entire lake roaring down the narrow Conemaugh Valley. The sound was said to be an unimaginable thunder, a primeval force. The water formed a monstrous wave estimated at 35 to 40 feet high, filled with churning debris, trees, boulders, houses, railway cars, anything in its path. This colossal wave, moving at speeds of 40 miles per hour, began its merciless journey towards Johnstown. Friday, May 31st, 4:07 p.m., the Johnstown Flood. Less than an hour after the dam's collapse, the monstrous wave slammed into Johnstown. There was little to no warning for most. The telegraph wires had gone down. A brave engineer, Daniel Perrotin, rode his horse ahead of the wave shouting warnings.
Oh no!
But for many, it was too late. The wave hit with such force that it literally scoured the landscape clean. Homes, businesses, churches, schools, entire neighborhoods were lifted from their foundations and pulverized. People caught in the deluge had mere seconds, if that, to comprehend what was happening. Families were torn apart in an instant. The water, thick with mud, timber, and the shattered remnants of the town, became a swirling maelstrom of destruction and death. The immediate aftermath was a scene from a nightmare. When the water finally receded to some degree, what remained was a landscape of utter devastation. Johnstown was gone, replaced by a vast, muddy plain littered with debris. But the horror wasn't over. Where the Stony Creek and Conemaugh rivers met just below the city, lay the old stone arch bridge, a colossal pile of debris. Wreckage from thousands of homes, trees, railroad cars, and sadly countless bodies became jammed against this bridge, forming an enormous dam of its own. Trapped within this colossal pile, thousands of people were alive, but severely injured or stranded. And then the unspeakable happened. Fueled by broken lamps and stoves, a fire broke out in the debris pile. It spread rapidly, consuming wood furniture and, tragically, the trapped victims. This fire in the flood became one of the most horrifying aspects of the disaster, burning for days and claiming hundreds of lives who had survived the initial deluge. The screams from the pile echoing through the night haunted survivors for the rest of their lives. Rescue efforts began almost immediately, though they were slow and incredibly difficult. The entire transportation infrastructure, roads, railways, had been destroyed. Aid came from surrounding communities and eventually from across the nation. Clara Barton and the newly formed American Red Cross arrived establishing hospitals and providing much-needed relief, their first major disaster response. The recovery was a monumental task. Thousands of bodies had to be identified, often a grim and heartbreaking process. Many were never found, swept away by the floodwaters, lost forever. The stench of death hung heavy over the valley for weeks. In the end, over 2,209 people lost their lives, making it one of the deadliest single natural disasters in American history. Entire families were wiped out. Over 99 entire families perished, and 396 children under the age of 10 were killed. The economic damage was catastrophic, estimated at millions of dollars equivalent to billions today. In the wake of the disaster, questions of accountability immediately arose. Fingers pointed directly at the South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club. Survivors and the families of victims filed numerous lawsuits seeking compensation for their immense losses. However, the legal battles faced a formidable opponent, the wealthy and influential members of the club. Lawyers successfully argued that the dam's failure was an act of God, a natural disaster beyond human control, rather than a result of negligence. This legal precedent, though controversial, effectively shielded the club members from financial responsibility. While the club did contribute to a relief fund, they were never held legally accountable for the dam's collapse. This outcome sparked widespread outrage and contributed to the rise of new legal principles regarding corporate liability and negligence in the face of public safety. Despite the unimaginable tragedy, the spirit of Johnstown refused to be broken. With immense courage and determination, the survivors began the arduous task of rebuilding their community from the ground up. It was a testament to human resilience, an unwavering belief in the future even amidst the deepest sorrow. The Johnstown Flood stands as a stark and painful reminder of the delicate balance between human ambition and nature's raw power. It's a story of how unchecked privilege and a disregard for engineering integrity can lead to unimaginable suffering. It underscores the profound responsibility that comes with harnessing the natural world, a lesson that societies continue to grapple with even today. But beyond the engineering failures and the legal battles, the Johnstown Flood is ultimately a story of people. Of those who perished too soon, of those who endured unspeakable horror, and of those who against all odds chose to rebuild. Their courage in the face of absolute devastation, their unwavering hope continues to echo through the rebuilt streets of Johnstown. It reminds us that even after the most unthinkable floods, the human spirit, like the rivers, finds a way to flow on. If you'd like to see an image in the hand-drawn paint style to depict the devastation in Johnstown after the flood, let me know.